Okay, hi everyone. This is Books Live with Katie. I signed in about a minute early just to give anyone who might be out there that wants to watch this live the chance to get on. Feel free to leave me comments, especially about books you are interested in reading. I am going to share about 6 titles that I have read in the past that are kind of either A, formative to who I am as a reader, or B, just I really enjoyed. So right now it's just going to be a casual me chatting about books I love. Like I said, don't hesitate to type in your questions. I'll do my best to answer them now. And if I can't answer them now, I'll leave messages in the post for this event. So without further ado, I will get started. So my name is Katie. I am one of the librarians here at the West Dallas Public Library. I have been here for a long time. And I have been one of those people that has always loved reading. I think it's pretty typical for people in libraries to give that response. Again, if this will just give you a feel about what I like reading to see if it's something you are interested in. So a lot of people like to ask librarians, what is the one book that really made you want to be a reader or made you into a reader? And I actually have one that I always go back to. It's a children's book, I will say. It's one that I read when I was probably 8, and I've probably read it 3 dozen times since then. It is Jacob Have I Loved by Katherine Patterson. I remember as a child really relating to the story of 2 sisters, one who is very much favored and one who is a little bit less favored, and just relating to that. I mean, what kid doesn't feel left out and like everything is unfair at any given time? There was also, I want to say, a Wonderworks for PBS movie that I just adored with the sisters, and it's one of those books that has really stuck with me my entire life. And the one thing I think I do really enjoy about it is that it really talks about how, sorry, spoiler alert, it's been out longer than I have, so I'm spoiling a 41-year-old book for you, sorry. It talks about how the one sister really didn't get enough attention because she was the stronger one and she could do it herself, and I think I liked that message. So for my formative years books, I always pick Jacob Have I Loved by Katherine Patterson. She also wrote Bridge to Terabithia, which is probably her more famous book. I see a couple more people joined us. We are doing Books Live with Katie. Feel free to write in your questions in the messages. I hope I have this technologically right. This is my first time doing a live Facebook event. Okay, so if you are familiar with me at the library, I am the young adult librarian here, so I do read a lot of young adult books. When I was just starting out in the library world, one of the books that someone handed to me, and I kind of wish I had it when I was a teen, especially an older teen, is Sloppy Firsts by McCafferty. This is a book about a girl named Jessica Darling who kind of does everything right. She's in the honors classes, she is a runner, but her best friend moves away from where they live in New Jersey after her brother dies of an overdose. So it's her dealing with kind of this isolation and also her kind of just growing up and trying to figure out who she is and who she wants to be. I think what I really like about this series is that you meet her when she's a junior in high school and you go through until she's a young 20-something and you kind of grow with her as a character and you see how, yes, as an adult reading it, you kind of think, oh my gosh, you are so immature, you have everything in front of you, why do you feel this way? But you kind of see how she grows up. And for me, this was a book I really read at the right time. I honestly reread this series probably every 2 or 3 years, and I did reread all 5 books during our stay for at home order. So I recommend this series just because it's a light, she's one of those things where everything feels like drama, but it really isn't drama. It's just her life, and she's a normal white teenage girl growing up in the suburbs. And so that's Sloppy First by McCafferty. Again, one of those books that just really was something I read at the right time in my life. Okay, I promise I do read more than juvenile and young adult books. I will say when it comes to adult fiction, I have really been on a romance kick. Now, I'm going to admit I used to be one of those people that was like, ugh, who reads romance? Well, there is a lot of really smart, intelligent romance that is out there. And the first author I will recommend to people is Susan Elizabeth Phillips. She is a Chicago author. Her books are fun, but really, really smart. like any genre, there are great romance books written, and then there's ones that are just not as great. That's just the way it works. But Susan Elizabeth Phillips, I feel on the whole, all of her books I just adore. This is the first book in her Chicago Stars series, which is about a fictionalized Chicago football team, because we all know, living in Wisconsin, that Chicago needs 2 football teams, even if one is fictional. So the first book in the series is It Has to Be You. It deals with a young woman who inherits her father's football team, and she goes from the owner, then who crosses paths, bangs heads with the coach, and then, of course, fill in the blank. So it's a really fun series. I kind of jokingly call it smart women who fall in love with athletes, and I find that I'm very drawn to those books for whatever reason. My absolute favorite book in the series is Match Me If You Can. I did do a Friday book talk about this a long time ago, but it deals with a matchmaker and a sports agent, and it's just one of those where everything is ridiculous and everything ends up the way you like it to be. Everyone's happy. The other thing I love about Susan Elizabeth Phillips, oh yeah, sorry, I think that's just the camera. Someone just told me the image is reversed, and it's because the camera's flipped. So I will put in the show notes all the titles of the books I talked about, and then I'll link to it from the Staff Reads blog. So if you want to see any of the titles I talked about, I'll put it there, and then I'll link to any longer reviews if we have them. So sorry about that. Anyway, so what's great about the series is the characters make appearances in other books. So if you start with, sorry about the flipped image, It Had to Be You, and then you go on to read the other books, you'll find characters popping up. So if you care about romance spoilers, maybe, I knocked my setup. If you care about spoilers, maybe don't read them out of order, but honestly, you can read them out of order. You're not missing plot points. You just kind of figure out who ends up with who. One of my favorite new books that I have read is One to Watch by Kate-Stayman-London. Now this is a total take up on 2 things that I have no real prior knowledge of. One is reality TV shows, dating TV shows, and the other one is fashion blogging. So in One to Watch, you have a young woman who is a plus-size fashion blogger who goes on a rant about the lack of diversity in sizes on a reality dating TV show, and ends up finding herself the star of the next season of the TV show. What is so smart about this book, One to Watch, is that she is okay with who she is. It's not about her journey to look different or fit into something else. She is comfortable in her skin and in her size, and she doesn't apologize about it. And even though she does have to work through some self-esteem stuff, it's very much about her trying to find love, like lots of people, and just her reactions with people, because these men didn't sign up for the show knowing that it would be a plus-size person. And it really makes you think about how we present ourselves, how other people see us. And I will say the nice thing about it was it really did look at the diversity in these types of shows. I am 100% honest when I say I really don't watch shows like The Bachelor, but I really found this book charming. It also really dealt, she was a blogger, so you got posts from her blogs, you got things from newsletters and gossip sites. So if you prefer things written in a kind of an untraditional format, One to Watch by I'm going to forget her name. Kate-Stayman-London, sorry, I gave her my name. I do that all the time. Kate-Stayman-London is kind of a fun, light romance book. Okay, the other thing I read a ton of are memoirs. I don't know why. I'm not a big fan of like historical biography, but a fun, light memoir I will read any day. My favorite author for memoirs is another Chicago author, Jen Lancaster. Now, if you haven't read any of Jen Lancaster's books, get ready to laugh. Her books, her observations are just so sharp and funny. She is a great author to see live if you ever get the chance again in the future. But Jen Lancaster is one of my favorite memoirists. Her first books were Bitter is the New Black and Bright Lights, Big Ass. And she talks about her life in Chicago before the kind of market crash in the early 2000s, like around 2005, 6, 7, clearly, again, not historical minded here. But what's great about her books is she just gives you these observations that are universal. And probably the one I would recommend most, again, going back to my lack of fashion knowledge, is Pretty in Plaid. She talks about her experience with style and fashion and growing up, what she wanted to wear and how it influences her now. She is a really fun person to follow on social media, which is something that I find great about authors. Like, if they're that kind of fun person and I want to hang out with them. So highly recommend Jen Lancaster as a memoirist. She has a new book that is going to be widely published in October called Welcome to the United States of Anxiety. And it is on my nightstand waiting to be read, and maybe I'll report back on that one. So memoirist Jen Lancaster, funny books, great observations. Now, I have talked about this next book, but it's one of those books that I want to shout from the rooftops. Sorry, I have a situation where my pile of books is going to fall. It is Bess Kalb's Nobody Will Tell You This But Me. It's an intergenerational story where a grandmother is telling her granddaughter the story of her mother, so the great-grandmother, the grandmother, the mother, and then the daughter. So it's 4 women and how their stories are intertwined, and it's really a book about mothers and daughters and grandmothers and even kind of motherhood in that sense. It's one of those books that just really stuck with me. I have now given it to my mom, my grandma, my mother-in-law. Now, my mother-in-law passed it on to her sister, who passed it on to her daughter's mother-in-law. So this book has gone out, and I know a couple of you have read it as well because I've seen a few comments on Facebook and people have come in and talked to me. I just loved her voice. The grandmother is one of those people you want to sit down and talk to. There's a history and a life lived and being at those times in history. So it's just one of those books that I recommend and I hand out to people all the time. So that's kind of me as a reader. One thing I will address, because as all readers, I have huge gaps in what I've read. I flat out am not a big historical fiction or history reader, and if I pick up a book that's historical fiction or history, it's usually because it has a romance, is a light memoir, or somebody told me I had to read it. So clearly as an adult, I don't read as much as that anymore. I do have a lack of diversity. Almost every book I talked about was written by a white woman. So I am working on that, trying to get a little bit more diversity in what I read. So in a couple of my next books do deal with, I have a couple books by black women and I'm looking for slightly more history. So we'll see how that goes. In all honesty, if you have recommendations for me, go ahead and leave them here or just come in and tell me, because I love taking recommendations. I can't promise I'll read them, but I usually check them out and flip through them. I do have N.K. Jemison's The Fifth Season checked out, which is a science fiction book written by a black woman. And the only reason I checked it out is on Twitter, someone made a comment about, I don't want to read books about where the person who has to save the world is a teenage girl. I want it about a mom who has to save the world between soccer pickup and drives a minivan. And someone said, have you read The Fifth Season? Because that's kind of the plot. And I put it on hold without knowing anything about it. So it's sci-fi, written by a black woman, and it fits a lot of those categories I do not read. So hopefully next month I can report back on that. I'm also looking forward to reading Want by Lynn Steger Strong. It's kind of one of those about a woman in her middle age who's having a crisis of parenthood and reaches out to an old friend on social media and what happens next. So again, that one probably more reflects my own life and where I am. So that's that. Yeah, so other than that, I don't have much on deck for what I'm reading. Next month, we're going to meet on October 28th at 10 a.m. here on Facebook Live. If I get any questions in the next month, I will try to respond to those as best I can. And if not, I look forward to giving you some recommendations, reporting back on what I've read, and hopefully give you some scary stories. I will give you a heads up, I do not like scary stories, so these will be scary stories for wimps. So this was our first session of Books Live with Katie. Thank you so much for watching. I will archive the video and make it available on Facebook and hopefully a few other places. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye!